Hello. How's it going? I'll pray really quick. Is that okay? Can you pray in church?
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for this Sunday, God. I just want to thank you for this opportunity that we have to come and worship you today, Lord. Jesus' blood washes white as snow, and we're able to come here today and worship you today, Lord. I pray that these words are from you, Lord, and I pray that if there's anything hindering us today, God, that you just break that down. I pray that we come broken to you today. I also pray, Lord, that I don't faint in front of all these people today. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So my dad was telling me the story of a pastor who's giving one of his first sermons and he fainted. So I just wanted to cover my bases, make sure I didn't faint in front of everyone. All right, so my name is Rowell. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows me, but if you don't, I am Pastor Chris's son. I go to Pacific Life Bible College. I'm just finishing up my first year in the Pastoral Leadership Program. Almost done. But yeah, so we're going to start with our Bible reading. So it's coming from Matthew 14, verses 22 to 23. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand, took a hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Verse 32, and when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And 33, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Beautiful. That preaches already by itself, right? Has anyone here almost drowned? You probably haven't drowned because you're still here, but have you almost drowned? I'm not talking about drinking water and you cough it up. I'm talking about almost drowned. So I almost drowned once. And I'm going to change the name of the people in this story because they're real people and I haven't asked them if I could use their name. So I had two friends growing up. One was named Fax and one was named Marlo. So they're totally fictional names. So Fax and Marlo, we were good friends, and one day we were swimming during church camp, and there's this platform. It was probably, I want to say, 20 feet away. So we got in the water, we start swimming, and all of a sudden Fax said, "Wait, can we bring this kid along?" Right? I was like, "Yeah, let's go, bring the kid." He's like, "But he doesn't know how to swim." So I said, "Okay, yeah, no, we'll make it work. He'll hold your shoulder, and the other hand will hold my shoulder." So we start swimming, and this was not a kid, he was pretty big. So we start swimming, right? We start swimming, and halfway through we realize that we're not that good at swimming. So Fax just books, he leaves me. He's like, "I can't do it, I'm so sorry." Leaves me, swims to the platform by himself. So it's just me and the kid. And I'm almost drowning. I'm not drowning yet, I'm almost drowning. So I'm swimming, right? And I'm swimming, and we almost make it. I turned to the kid, I said, "Sorry, it's time to meet the Lord." So we start sinking. But when he starts to realize I can't swim anymore, guess what he does? He jumps off my back and swims the rest of the way to the platform. So I start swimming. I'm like, okay, well, I can make it too. And I'm like, no, because I start cramping, so I can't. And here's my thoughts. See, when you're close to death, you start thinking crazy thoughts. So this is what I thought. I was like, okay, I can't swim anymore. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sink to the bottom of the ocean, or the lake. I'm going to sink to the bottom of the lake, and I can just run back to shore. Right? that was my thinking, that I could sink, and I'm just going to run back. Didn't work out. I kept going, and I started realizing that I kept sinking and sinking and sinking. I was like, this is not going to work. So one last time, I just give it all I got and swim to the top. And I was like, this is it. This is how it's going to end. And I see this hand just reach down. I was actually this far away from the platform. I see this hand just reach down and grab me up, and it was Marlo. Right, so I can understand the distress that Peter must have been in this situation, right? The Bible it's clear that he swims, because he swims in the end of the book of John. He swims towards Jesus, so he could swim, right? But I think in the panic and the waves, sometimes you forget what you already know, right? But let's find out why he got into this situation in the first place, right? So we see in verses 22 and 23, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. Notice it was evening. Right, so here's the setup. Jesus has just fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And the Greek word for it was they were gorged. That's how much they ate. With only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they were gorged. Right? And you have to keep in mind, at this time, for them to be full didn't happen very often. Right? Because the resources that they had, it's not like us where we can go all-you-can-eat buffet, right? It's not like that. We had to ration our food because it was not possible. Right? So then Jesus dismisses the disciples, tells them, go ahead, I'm going to clear the crowds, and then I'm going to go up and pray. Right? And this is something that we can learn from Jesus, is that we need rest. Right? So, we know our pastors are all of our pastors are vacation. We have 2 pastors in Israel or whatever, right? It's good for them. They need some rest. It would be just nicer if they brought me with them. But I can understand the need for rest. And I think that not just the pastors need rest, but all of us here need rest as well. Right? And sometimes we think of rest as vacation, but it's not always vacation. It can also be social media rest. Right? It can be rest from electronics. Some people can't even go to use the washroom. They can't even use the washroom without having their phone. And everyone's smiling in here because everyone is like that, right? You can't even go to the washroom without having your phone on you. I actually did a fast from electronics for like 2 years, and I would still, even after 2 years, I would still open my phone, turn it on, and swipe, looking for Facebook app. And when I didn't have it, I was like, oh. Then I'd lock it and put it back in my pocket. And one time, Rose saw me do this. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh no, I just thought there was Facebook." And I put it back in my pocket. Right? So you can also see that Jesus sometimes secludes himself, right? That's something that we can learn from Jesus too. To sometimes it's good to get away and just spend some time in prayer. Right? So let's continue on, verse 24 to 27. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the 4th watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Right, so can you imagine seeing someone walking on water towards you? That would freak you out. They thought it was a ghost, right? And keep in mind, the previous verse told us it was evening, so it was even nighttime. That's even scarier. And it was possibly a full moon at the time. Can you imagine a full moon? You're in the middle of the water, in a boat, and you just see this. Right? I would freak out too. But Jesus says, hold on. Relax. Don't be afraid, it's me. And then Peter does something insane. He does something crazy in verses 28 and 29. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. That's beautiful. That's beautiful right there, and that brings me to my first point today, and that's trust. Peter had enough trust in Jesus to go and walk out on the water to him. This is a big thing. I got a quote here by Jonathan Edwards, he was a preacher in the 1700s. Men will trust God no further than they know Him. Right? Isn't that beautiful? Men will trust God no further than they know Him. So you can't trust someone if you don't know them. Right? If a stranger said, hey, come in my car. I'm not sure if I would be able to do that, right? Because I don't know them. And notice the disciples actually had already trusted Jesus in the beginning, because Jesus had said, get in the boat and go. Right? I wonder if anyone was like, well, Jesus, how are you going to get across? Right? Did they leave him taxi money? Like, how is Jesus going to meet them on the other side? So they had already trusted Jesus because they knew Jesus. They'd just seen him feed 5,000 people. Can I say sometimes God will send you to places where you don't want to go? Right? And sometimes, for me, when I don't want to go, the reason I don't want to go is because Jesus isn't there. That's what I think, right? Jesus is not there, so I don't want to go there. Just like the disciples, they trusted Jesus wasn't there, but they trusted him to go. Right? And maybe it's because you can only trust someone as much as you know him. Notice Peter asked Jesus too. He asked Jesus, can I walk to you? Right? When was the last time that you did something like that? Right? When was the last time you asked Jesus, is this a good idea, Jesus? And my dad, he spoke on this before, where people only pray kind of when they're in the hole, when they're in debt, right? When they're in the problem. When at first maybe you should be praying, God, do you think I should buy this Tesla? Right? We should be praying ahead of time, so later on, when we're crying out, right, it's a little bit more understandable. This story here is a visual representation to me of walking by faith, not by sight. Right? So he steps out on the water. This is crazy to me. And the Bible is pretty clear on trust. Right? ETS, what is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6? I was going to put it on the slide, but because we have ETS, I didn't do it, but then I realized I forgot it myself, so I wrote it down here. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Trust in the Lord, just like Peter did in this story. Do not lean on your own understanding. And can I say that, do you think your own understanding can also include this? Right? Do you think your own understanding can include this? And before you guys never ask me to ever speak again, I'm not saying the Bible is bad. The Bible is amazing. It's God-breathed. It's profitable for teaching, that rebuke, the ETS verse, right? It's good stuff. This is really good stuff. But you know what? This means nothing to me if I just understand it. If I just read this means nothing to me unless I go out and do something about it. That's what I mean by trusting in the Lord, not your own understanding. This is a representation of that. Right? I can know all this contains all truth, but if I have this memorized, say I memorized the Bible word for word, does that mean I know all truth? No, right? And I love the Bible because it's constantly pointing outwards. Go love your neighbor, right? Go help your friend. It's always pointing outwards, and I love that. I'm so sorry, Rowell. I keep walking around. Am I ruining the shot? Okay. So that's what I mean by trust. Trusting in the Lord's plan, not your knowledge, not your understanding, trusting in the Lord's plan that's greater for you, greater than you could ever dream. Trust Jesus. So continuing on, verse 30 and 31. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand, took a hold of him, saying, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" So this is a turning point in the story, right? This is climax, right? So Peter's walking on the water. Things get a little shaky. Things get a little sketchy, right? The winds start to pick up. We know that this lake had mountains around it, so the wind could have been just going at him. Middle of the night, it's pretty dark, right? So he starts sinking. Jesus, save me. "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And we say, "Oh yeah, amen, why'd you doubt?" Right? Amen. I've done that. I've done that before. And I always thought, Jesus, that is so harsh to say that, right? He's the only one who walked on the water to you. Why would you say, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Can I say that that's the type of faith Jesus requires? "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" So there are times when we might be walking to Jesus, right? We're walking to Jesus and we start to notice trouble. We start to notice trials, right? We start to notice problems, and then that's when we sink, when we take our eyes off of Jesus and start to notice the things around you, and you fail, right? And you don't just fail, but you feel like you failed Jesus. And that brings me to my second point, which is failure. C.S. Lewis says this: God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. Our failures, our hardships, our pain, our struggles, our burdens are so easy to get caught up in. Can I say, do you know that some of your burdens actually start off as blessings? Think about, if you say you're at your work and your boss is having a bad day, so your boss yells at you, right? And you're like, "Oh, I hate this job. This job's so hard." But I guarantee you there's a time before that interview where you're praying, "God, can I please get this job?" Right? Or school, like me, man, because my school's in Surrey, I have to wake up at like 6. I don't like to wake up at 6. Right? And I have so many assignments due. Right? But there was actually a time when I was praying, "God, send me some direction. God, can I get into this school?" So we always have to keep in mind, sometimes our burdens start off as blessings. One of my professors has a great analogy, right? So he would say, to really understand it, you can take a piece of paper. Right, this is from Dean. So you can take a piece of paper, right, and write down, say, your failure, write down your burdens, right? Write down the problems that you're having. Write it down on a piece of paper. Go to your room, close the door, write it down on a piece of paper, and show it to God. Like, "God, this is my problem, this is my failure here, God, and I'm having a hard time." And you know what God will do? God will look at it, right? God will say, "Yeah, I heard you. All right. Good, keep holding it up." Right? So you'll keep holding it up, and you're, "God, this is my failure, this is my burden." God will say, "Yeah, I can see that. It's pretty big. Keep holding it up," right? "God, this is my failure, this is my burden," until you realize that you are this piece of paper is starting to weigh 1,000 pounds in your arms. You can't hold up your arms anymore. And eventually you're going to have to lay it down before God. And that's when God can work. In your failures. I'm sorry, this is your lyrics, I'll put this back. But that's when God can work. Right? 2 Corinthians 12, 9 to 10. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with my weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Sometimes this is why I had this slide directly after trust. That's why I had failure directly after trust. Because sometimes you trust Jesus, sometimes you're going to fail. And we always think it's going to be, yeah, Christianity, we're good, right? No. Sometimes you're going to go through rough times. Sometimes you're going to go through hardships. Apostle Paul was going through a rough time of this, but he realized that power is made perfect in weakness, in Jesus' power. So we move on. What did they do right after? What did Jesus and Peter do directly after? So Peter has just been lifted up out of the water, right? 32. And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. And that's what brings me to my third point, is we need to worship God. See, this is kind of my situation, the 3 points that go. A lot of time when pastors speak on stuff, it's just stuff they're struggling with. I'm not a pastor, so. So sometimes I'll trust Jesus, sometimes I'll fail, but this last part here is the hardest part for me. Worship broken. Because when I fail, when I have problems with sin, I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but I would sit in the corner and just be like, you know? Like, here we go again. Why can't I stop doing this? And I read this passage, and it says Jesus brought him out of the water. Keep in mind, too, this was from Pastor Ben. I'm going to steal this from him. So, Jesus didn't just, he could have just levitated Peter out of the water, right? He just walked on water, so I don't think it's out of his power to just be like, right, and put him in the boat. He reached down and picked him up. Right? He reached down and picked them up, and he brought them to the boat. And at this point, if Peter was anything like me, he would have been dripping wet, just soaking, in the corner of the boat like this. Because I just failed. Not only did I fail, I failed in front of Jesus. But what does it say that they did? When they got in the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat, meaning Peter, worshipped him. Can I say it's not bad to have conviction? It's not bad to be like, oh, right? But you know what's even better is if you take that kind of conviction, you take that feeling of, oh, I really messed up. You take that feeling and you worship with it. And I think not only like culturally, but we're kind of programmed to kind of leave our baggage before we go to church. Right? It's like we gotta have our stuff together before we can come and worship God. But we see from this example here God just wants to be worshipped. My dad and I were brainstorming for ideas of this, for the name of this sermon, because I couldn't think of any names. And we ended up with Beauty of Brokenness. And you might be thinking, well, this story is actually about faith. It's not about brokenness, right? It's walk by faith, not by sight. Visual representation, right? But to have true faith, you have to have a level of brokenness. We don't have to have our perfect church clothes on, our perfect church smile. Church isn't for perfect people. There was only one perfect person, they killed him, right? So I'm going to close with this. I think, yeah, we're going to come up. This person, let's get in the mood. Can you turn off the light? So I'm going to close with this. And everyone's like, amen, because it wasn't that long. This is called kintsugi. It's Japanese art. So it's the art of repairing old, broken pottery with gold. Broken, worthless bowls, whatever, plates, cups, and making them into something beautiful. You know what I see when I look at stuff like this? This guy. I still am, I'm pretty broken. But God's repaired me with gold. And sometimes I cry during worship, and I'm sorry if that freaks you out. Right? I'm sure it freaks people out when I start just bawling, but it's because I was drowning in my sin and Jesus lifted me. I'm not sad. I am blessed. I'm so happy. We can come to church, we can play church games, we can pretend everyone's perfect. We can come, we can dress up nice, we can have all of that. We can think that church is only for the perfect, is only for those who have their stuff together, or we can come to the simple conclusion that we all need Jesus. I was going to tell this story, but I was going through a rough period in my life, and I had just come back to Christ. But people were looking at me and kind of just seeing the same Rowell. This is the same guy. There's no goal in there. He's just broken. And I stayed up till like 5 a.m. praying to God. God, what can I do about this? And He gave me a vision. It was clear as I could see, this picture in my head of me, and I'm taking all of my struggles, I'm taking all of the people I've hurt, and I'm putting them in this bag. And there's a lot of people I hurt, and I put them all in this bag. I'm taking drug and alcohol abuse, and I'm putting them in this bag. Everything in this bag is huge. I can't even lift it anymore. And then I tie it up, and I walked over, and I gave it to Jesus. And Jesus went on the cross, and He died, holding my bag. Are you broken? Are you drowning today? Can I say, just like we said earlier, it's not over for you. It's not over for me. It's the reason I'm up here today is because Jesus lifted me out of the water. He'll do the same for you.
Jesus is reaching for you, baby.